All right, welcome everybody. If you're viewing this show, we've got a few guests here, bringing back the famous, or rather infamous, uh, Taylor Briggs as a guest here. So ESTP certified. He's got the hard hat to prove it. And then you've got Emily from her particular channel. I'll put the link below. I can't pronounce it, and I'm not going to attempt to.
Okay.
And then I have the famous LII, Trey Pierce, who always finds a way to argue himself into an argument. It's amazing how it happens, but there you have it. So we're gonna the topic was selected by Taylor as a particular aspect to start analyzing characteristics of a particular person based on what we understand of typology. So that's the direction that we'll take this. Should it go off into a different direction, I don't expect it to stay entirely on task. So we'll see what happens and where it goes. So Taylor, you can go ahead and kick it off as far as talking about what specifically you'd like to analyze about Love Lou and her channel.
Sure. I just kind of picked a topic that had my interest and I reached out to you, Damon. I thought that we might be able to throw our 2 cents in, since I'm about as ESTP as they come, and you are now ESTP as well. It's been interesting for me because I really don't know with Love Lou. I've talked to her a few times offline. I never questioned her being an ESTP, and then she did that video with C.S. Joseph, and it kind of got me thinking. So I want to hear your input, everyone's input. I don't know.
I think I have that video actually pulled up over here on my other monitor. It's the one where she was with the other girl, right?
Right, and that was probably my favorite part, is watching the interactions and watching Katie and Lou.
Mm-hmm.
They're that's really what got me questioning, because I can watch Katie and you can see her sort of doing things over here when she's not talking, or looking around over there, and it just is one of those things I instantly related to. Lou seems a little bit more focused. She's looking forward. She's addressing C.S. Joseph. There's a lot more social engagement, I think, there.
Right. And I think that's what he pointed out. I was just getting to that. I think he thought she was an ENFJ. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So other people had typed her as ESTP, which Dave Superpowers from OP typed her as ESTP, I believe, too, using his system, which is a completely different taxonomy. So when we're looking at type, I think it's always important, and this is just me, but I think it's always important to clarify which taxonomy we're using. As you know, everybody decides to go and make their own wheel instead of using one that works. And I think part of the problem is finding one that works. Would we agree on that?
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah, so I'm going to stick to the traditional Model A. That seems to be the most effective for me. It's what I understand the most as of late, and it's the one I'm most familiar with. So as I kind of pop through this and mute my phone here, I'll listen to certain things, and I think I'll comment on it. But I think one of the biggest indicators is that just that this like energy that we automatically see, like I've got to be doing something, and that shows when we look at SE and Socionics. That's activity, that's being able to move, but it should not come off like a restlessness in a sense, because there's always, hey, it's directive activity. And I think being able to sit still and having a conversation can be hard for people who have high levels of sensing in general, though. So
I know that in my experience, these video chats are harder to sit through when you're not speaking, just because, obvious reasons. So I don't know. Lou seems to be on top of her game. Either she's really got that SE grappled down, or she's an ENFJ, which is a very similar type to us. So.
right. There was a period in my life where I thought I could have been an ENFJ because I was so passionate about certain changes and certain social change. Like I wanted to fix things. I still do. I just display it differently. I realized that I don't have that kind of social prowess, nor do I enjoy the social atmosphere as much as someone who is ENFJ, though I do appreciate certain aspects of it. So I can see the similarity there. But I think when we look at behavior, the important part is to really identify what is motivating that behavior? So, Emily, do you want to attribute anything to what we've said thus far?
Well, it's interesting because I just don't see ENFJ with her whatsoever. I've had, like I was saying before this, I've had interactions with her just like offline as well. Like, for example, we're trying to eventually do like a collaborative video, and she's very much like how Taylor was saying, like she doesn't really like doing live interviews with people. She likes the like in-person interaction. She's gonna drive like whatever amount of time to see someone in person versus like even getting on this call right now. She doesn't value that. And like with ENFJs, so for example, Megan Lavoda, who I'm very good friends with, she's very different than that. Like, for example, last night we literally talked on the phone for 4 hours, like over 4 hours. And I don't know if an ESTP would want to do that. Like, I know I don't have too many ESTPs in my personal life, but I do know, like, for example, Taylor, and I do think Love Lou and stuff like that. But I can kind of compare it to like an ESFP. So like I dated this ESFP and I'm still really good friends with him. And like in person, we are just way different. Like the interaction is just way more dynamic and like magnetic. And I know that he's way more comfortable being in person because he has like this like because he leads with extrovert sensing. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. Do you think that so you're on the side that she's actually a ESTP, right?
I don't see ENFJ at all.
Okay. Do you think she could be anything else, or you're sticking to specific ESTP?
I don't know. I can see like that she has like extroverted feeling in her stack, but I guess I should consider ENFJ. The way I typically will narrow things down with people is like I always like to look at the quadras. So I like lump alpha and beta quadra like with extroverted feeling together, and then I'll lump the gamma and delta quadra together with introverted feeling. And I typically will narrow it down that way. Like I'll narrow down which types someone isn't, and then I kind of come to that conclusion. And to me, there's not really many types that pop out in my mind besides ESTP. And even like I remember, I don't know when it was, like I don't really like remember the moment, but I watched her like original ESTP video that she did like years ago or something, like when it first came out. And I was like, wow, she really seems like an ESTP. Like there's just been really no doubt in my mind, kind of. I don't know.
So it sounds like you use a little bit of the process of the elimination to be able to type. Is that right?
In some ways, but also just like the way she interacts and I mean, not just that. Like I consider other things as well. I don't think she's very comfortable, and she's even expressed this. Like I'm not going to read like messages, but she doesn't feel comfortable really being on camera. I mean, she does, but not like in interacting with people on camera. She likes to be in person because she doesn't like having that kind of disconnect, that physical disconnect that you experience, like what we're doing right now. And I don't know if that makes sense.
So it does make sense what you're saying, where the challenge for me is naturally an ESTP has polar FI. They're not aware of physical barriers or distance in general. It's like voice, all the same. That's where my challenge would be initially. I don't know her. I have not watched her videos. I'm just going off what you're saying. And I would imagine that if there's some kind of barrier in between physical intimacy, that would show someone who has a pretty decent understanding of F5. Doesn't mean they value it. It just means they have some decent proficiency in it. I would go as far as saying we should consider at least that she might actually be an ethical type.
Are you most considering maybe ESFP?
Possibly. I don't know yet. I don't have enough.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That resistance to this sort of interface is not something I relate to.
At all.
Right, at all. And yeah, I mean, I don't need to keep a finger on the pulse of the people that I'm interacting with that closely.
Yeah.
I find it much more uncomfortable to make a video on my own and speak to a camera that's not talking back to me.
Yeah, I can attribute to that. I've done a lot of videos on my own, and without it being like just me ranting, it's like there's so many videos where like I got to start the whole video over, delete, because I feel like I'm not talking to somebody. But as far as the intimacy and knowing like there's a barrier or not, it's, to me, that would be, I mean, I can't even make sense of it. It's just like, I don't even, I hear what you're saying, but it's like, it doesn't make sense to me, like why that would be any infringement. I can't necessarily say that I speak for all polar FI people, but it sounds like somebody who's aware of those things. And it sounds like somebody who actually has some decent understanding and ethical relations. And it could be, of course, not polar, but it could be something else. I would definitely put SEE in the running too.
Okay. Yeah, actually, because I might be even misquoting her. I'm going to look at the messages.
Right.
And see what she said.
Yeah. Well, as long as she's okay with it, one thing
Well, I'm not going to like read them out loud.
Yeah.
I'm just I'll mute myself really quickly and like
just share screen. We want to read them.
Yeah, let's actually just read it all. Let's expose her. No, just
There's nothing to expose. She's really sweet.
Hey Trey, do you have any commentary thus far?
No.
Okay. So
the person we're typing, just to check in, isn't currently in the call, right?
No, but she's probably watching this video.
Okay.
It's way more fun to talk about people when they can't weigh in on themselves.
Yeah, because then you can be objective.
Is there some place where she's going to comment on someone's channel, like somebody's live chat or something?
I have no idea what she's going to do. She does know about this. I sent her a text and let her know. So she said, have fun, go at it, however. So.
All right.
So my gut is telling me SEE right now. And I don't like to go off my gut, but I'm thinking SEE Gamma Quadra. And because of the high FE, the 4-dimensional FE would make sense. And then you have the other side of it, which is the valuing of the personal bonds and barriers so far. Again, I haven't seen anything from Love Lou, so I couldn't say for sure, but based on how she's being described.
Okay, so this is okay. Okay, I feel like this is just me and I just don't remember correctly about things. But she said, So
we're exposing her then, right?
No, exposing me, like as like having a bad like memory when it comes to this kind of stuff. She said, okay, so I said like, thank you. When do you think you would want to meet up? And she said, I'm interested in this. I'll tell you what I've got going on and we could see what works for both of us. Thanks for being down to travel. The online chat thing doesn't excite me like real life meetings. Let me see if there's other things.
Just to confirm, she is in the MBTV chat, live chat.
Oh, she's in the chat on the video?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, hey, Love Lou.
All right, so someone kick her, please. Because now she's watching. We can't talk about her now that she's present.
If she's an SEE, then nothing that we say here will convince her that she's anything other than what she started out as.
Right. Yeah. So all I'm saying is that we should put that into the running as something to consider when we're analyzing type, is that and we have somebody already on that board that says that Diamond R thinks she's ESFP, which is SEE.
Well, something to also consider, which puts something else into the mix. Her like partner is an INTP.
Okay. Allegedly.
Right.
Which in Socionics, if that was the case, if she was SEE and he was why am I not even thinking right now? LII, then that would not be a good match whatsoever. That would be conflictor.
I think that could be, if we know that that's his type for sure, right? So
But
I think that would,
but they would be conflictors.
yes, they would be if that's his type. That's where I can question that aspect. Yeah. Yes. And I think that conflictors even can somehow manage. It's difficult. I think there's a way to make it work, but yes, there should be conflict in a conflicting relationship.
Yeah.
So I think that if there's not a sufficient amount of miscommunication, then more than likely they're not conflictors rather. So I think that they're going to be probably on a different Socionics relationship. But I do think that we should either consider ESI or SEE as both possibilities at this point, as well as the standard SLE as a possibility, and even LSI. And we are considering EIE too. So
ESI, did you put ESI on there?
I did.
ISFP?
Yep, could be.
No.
What's the argument against it?
I guess I don't have a super strong one, but I'm with, my girlfriend is one, and just it's just a different energy level.
Okay.
I mean, look at Charles Benson, right? He's got a YouTube channel. He's an ISFP. The pace with ESIs is slower, steadier, less peppy. I just don't see. I just don't see it.
Sure. I think that's valid, but if we're referring to model A, you're going to see ESIs with still a little bit of high energy to them, because that's their creative function and that's what they use to push into the world. It is going to be more reserved than someone who leads off with extroverted sensing as their primary, or force as their primary. But I think that the big problem with the term ISFP, and this is why I don't like the MBTI coding, is because ISFP and MBTI is like the artistic painting, oh my God, I love art type. And instead of it being this, hey, look, I can use force and I can apply pressure when I need to and want to. And
they're savage as fuck.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's why I do not like the MBTI terms. I think it creates a confused dichotomy, or taxonomy rather. Okay, is it MBTI are we talking about, or is it an ESI? Now, if your girlfriend's an ESI, then naturally you're going to have a good vibe of what that energy may feel like. And I think that's fair, but we would need to logically eliminate ESI from a possibility from her. So we would need to match it with a model. Like ESIs, for example, will have polar NE, right? So if that is something we can rule in favor and say she has NE in somewhere other slot, then we can rule out ESI effectively.
ESIs are FE ignoring. They never make the sort of content that Lou makes, where it's like, 5 things that drive me nuts about this type, but she's really complimenting them along the way. ESI would tell you what the fuck you're doing that bothers them.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a fair argument.
Didn't Eric from Talking with Famous People originally type her as ESFJ?
I do not know.
Because to me, I don't know. So, okay, Lou, or Luann, if you could kind of explain the reasons why, you can even send me like a voice message if you want. But the reasons why you don't like meeting in person.
So you're asking for her response?
We can continue on, but
yeah. So I think that's fair. We need to analyze the motives. Naturally, that seems like somebody who's aware of boundaries and yearns for personal relationships to be more intimate. So I would strongly suggest that's a case for a polar, not being polar FI, but I want to see the motivation behind it too. It could be something else.
One thing that was brought up when Lou and Katie made a video, talking about how alike they are, is thinking about future, their future self. So if I'm trying to stop myself from doing something ridiculously stupid, which I do all the time, I think about future Taylor. I'm not going to do Taylor like that. And they said they both did that. That would work for SEE and SLE. Because that'd be sort of a 4-slot NI thing, is how I interpreted that.
Yeah, they generally suck at that. That's why they keep screwing up. But it's like, but yeah, that's pretty. What I would say is, puerile. It's pretty childish, right? Like, what does future Chad look like? What do you want to be when you grow up? You know, like, and that's what I want to avoid, is that it's like, I need someone to tell me, look, this is what you're doing. This is what you if you continue this behavior, this is what's going to happen as a result.
Right. And I've always assumed that future Taylor, I mean, has shit figured out. Like, fuck, future Taylor can take that. Future Taylor's got that. You got that.
Yep. And that's kind of how I see it too, is get all my shit straight. Trey, you got any commentary thus far?
I don't really know what I would comment on. I don't know who this person is.
Neither do I.
Trey, what are you looking at over there on the left of the screen?
I have the Discord and the live chat open. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't have a clue who this person is, but we're just going off what Taylor and Emily are saying about this particular individual. And so far, the most glaring thing is this polar FI part. I do, what I've seen of the videos, which is very, very limited, I do see this attentiveness to FE. And that could definitely be in favor of like roll FE or whatever, but I don't think it's that. It seems to be highly attentive. So again, I'm considering SEE as a pretty strong possibility, and I haven't ruled it out yet. So SEEs would be TI polar. So what we'd have to do is find evidence to support TI polar.
Okay.
Yeah. So when Emily gets back, she can kind of maybe contribute to that a little more.
TI polar is kind of hard to demonstrate in this context.
It could be, but I'm sure she has something that we can try to uncover. I've not watched enough of her videos to see how she structures. Is she clarity seeking or is she integrity seeking? I haven't seen enough to be able to really get to that. And
so I guess we're mainly looking at, whether or not she's using force or ideas more.
Well, I'm analyzing the archetype of Love Lou that's painted by Taylor and Emily here. I'm not actually typing her. I'm typing the archetype because I don't have any idea of her behavior. So I'm just kind of practicing the ability to be able to identify.
What's the archetype? Where did you have? Can you send it to me?
No, it's just they're saying it. Emily and Taylor. There's nothing that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just kind of get feedback on what their experience is. And Taylor, you know her personally, right?
I don't have them on me. They're on the nightstand. Not well. I mean, a little bit. We've talked a little bit offline. So probably, I'm sure less than Emily does.
Okay. What difference?
She does in person have a bit more of. She's got a bit more SE in her demeanor.
She's got a little more SE.
Her offline demeanor is a bit more forceful.
Okay.
And a bit more.
Yeah. Okay. And so what differences have you noticed between
SE one-on-one or offline than she does? Can you hear me?
You're lagging pretty bad. Was he lagging for you, Trey?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. This wasn't me. Yeah, his computer will catch up.
I'm gonna refresh him.
So there we have it. I can't really keep contributing to her as long as Emily's gone and Taylor's gone. So, I have no idea how to work with that, but I can say.
Okay.
So they're back.
I'm back. Sorry.
No worries. So ideally, what I'd like to do is stream a video on this Hangouts and then actually analyze what we see. But unfortunately, Hangouts doesn't have the highest bandwidth, so I won't be able to do that. So I kind of need to depend on you and Taylor to give me a picture of how she is in life and kind of things like that to be able to kind of add my 2 cents in.
Yeah.
All right. What I was saying is, I think in life outside of YouTube, she's more forceful in person.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when you say forceful, Emily, what does that look like to you? Do you see that same force that Taylor's seeing?
Well, I don't know her too well. That's the thing. So it's hard for me to say. But yeah. So I really don't know what to say for that. Actually, I don't know if she's still watching, but it would be good if she could like send an explanation for things.
Yeah.
Or, like, what her thing.
So what I would think is that what I did see in her video is that she did mention that she's a rule breaker. Okay. So that automatically does help me think that she definitely likes to break the rules. Now, again, that might be SE leading or SE creative, but it's there. What I think that we need to clarify in is she says she always does it. Why does she always do it? It's her way of testing out and feeling it out. And those are things that I'd like to know too.
Yeah.
Do you guys know that about her at all? Yeah, Taylor, I can't hear you at all.
Am I
There you go.
still laggy?
Yeah.
Slightly.
Slightly.
Oops. Wait a second. Sorry.
What do we have as far as
if we can't get any more information on her, I'm gonna have to pivot the subject because I'm not gonna be able to continue without more information. I tried to get a little bit in, but I didn't have enough to really work with.
All right, hit me with what types are left. ESC, SLE.
So it would be ESE is possible, SLE is possible, SEE is possible, EIE is possible. But you said she's got again. I don't think IEI, rule out IEI. So I would say those out of those types: ESE, SLE, SEE.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the YouTube channel open in another tab, and as I kind of go through it, it's looking more and more ethical. She's looking more like an ethical type the more I kind of work through this.
Yeah.
And something that jumped out at me for a while is that she's nice. For an SLE, she doesn't have anything bad to say about anybody, or any kind of snarky comments or whatever. She's not offensive to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I lean in the ethical type direction too, based on what I saw, which isn't enough to really conclude. I mean, I'd be 10% confident in that conclusion at this point, but based on what I've seen, that's what I would lean toward. It's ethical. Plus, if you take into account that typically SEEs break rules for the sake of breaking them. And it's this resistance of control that you're going to see a lot more, whereas you're going to see the other type, SLE, create rules and enforce and subordinate others to follow those rules. And there's a big difference between the two types. And SEEs, you're going to see them kind of just breaking them all the time, whereas SLEs will play with them, bend them, and use them, but mainly they're focused on creating them and putting other people in those structures. It's very hierarchy focused. I want to take control and subordinate you to the system that I've created. And so that generally will indicate that niceness that you see is generally not done that way. It's done in a way of, hey, look, I've got more power and I'm going to put you in this system. Taylor, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree with that. Very much. Yeah. I was married to an SEE, and that sort of power dynamic that you just described with, me trying to impose a hierarchy and her breaking the hierarchy. It was, I mean, there's a reason our marriage only lasted a year, but it's, and neither of us had any clue that it could be any other way. Then, I just knew I was the boss. She just knew she was the boss. It was a weird back and forth, but
yeah,
they do push out, and it's like a preemptive rebellion,
right.
almost.
Right. I see a double points for SEE, and I'm not seeing a lot of support for SLE right now. So if we can pivot, and Emily, can you provide some things that might indicate she's SLE or even ESE?
I guess it's hard for me to say. because I have very little experience with SLE females. So it's difficult for me to be definite in that. But I guess I do see the fact that she is very sweet. And I don't really associate sweet with ESTP, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I also don't really associate sweet with ESFPs either. I know quite a few ESFP females in real life, and she doesn't really seem very similar to them in a lot of ways. But I do understand the power dynamic that Taylor was describing with like ESTPs and ESFPs. I don't know. I'm sorry. I really probably should not even be on this chat because like I feel like I don't even have anything like good to contribute to this, but yeah.
Yeah. So
sounds like it's leaning more towards, away from SLE.
Yeah.
If she is an SCE and her husband is an INTP, dude needs to call a hotline or something. He's in trouble.
Yeah, he better watch out, and also she better watch out because that's going to be painful for both of them if that's the case. Now, again, we don't know for sure, so hey, we don't even know intricacies of that. But SEE makes the most sense because it's demonstrative FE. It's here you go. As far as what I understand, here's my 4-dimensional FE. It's got strong dimensionality, so I'm looking less at behavior. Oh, she's nice. Well, I guess we can all pretend to be nice once in a while, right? So.
SEEs are good at pretending to be nice.
Yes, and I'm not so much. So the 4-dimensional FE kind of shows not only the behavior, but as she's attentive to C.S. Joseph. Where if C.S. Joseph went on and tried to challenge me with an argument about type, I'm going to dive into that argument. I'm going to start breaking it down by structure, and saying, look, you can prove that, but how are you going to argue against this? And are we talking about your taxonomy? Are we talking about mine? There's going to be less, hey, yeah, that makes sense. Very nice. Good job. I pat you on the back. It's going to be much more of a debate, and it's going to be a challenge to win. Whereas
from what you guys were saying,
C.S. Joseph doesn't do that stuff.
Yeah, well, he was on the show, so apparently he was nice enough to jump on or whatever, or brave enough, or whatever term you want to use, to jump on. But it would be a very different discussion with somebody who's a logic user, especially TI, that you're pushing this taxonomy on me, and I'm going to break it and show you why mine is better. And that would be the general discussion. I don't know if that discussion went that direction, but I'd certainly be more than welcome to watch the rest of that video at some point and figure that out. But I think SEE, the 4-dimensional FE, is there, but the indication of bonds is likely to be there. And I want to interact with people personally. Again, what are the motivations for this behavior? I don't know. So it would be hard to say.
Off the top of my head, I don't think that C.S. Joseph made a lot of super strong, points. There wasn't mental swordplay going on from a TI satisfying standpoint. When he was questioned about something a couple times, I noticed that he kind of, did the quick pitch, well, directing and, masturbating and spinning, just the wordplay, and kind of like, okay, well, I guess we're not talking about that.
Well, I'd imagine that you'd have an alpha and a beta if this is the case in the same conversation, similar to Trey and I. Trey and I are debating constantly about something.
Also, I don't believe that Chase is an ENTP.
Okay, well, I mean, that's fair. And in his own Chaseology, he's an ENTP, so we don't know what he is. And well, I guess everybody thinks he's ENTJ, LIE. So if we say he's LIE, then naturally you would assume the TI ignoring and why he's directing and masturbating and everything else that he's doing in this call.
He should explain his masturbating.
Yeah, I mean, we deserve an explanation. As an audience to witness this, we deserve an explanation.
C.S. Joseph, why are you masturbating?
On live YouTube streams.
It's because he's an intuitive, I'm telling you.
Yeah, they don't care about any of those sensing needs. They don't care about, you know, and what is it? If he's got weak FE, so he doesn't care if he's got to, you know, masturbate in public or private, but
it's more fun with a friend. That's what you guys are all here for.
Right. So aside from that, I don't know exactly where to go with this because she's not here. She can't share her motivations. So I would say it's a dead end.
Well, I mean, she knows. I mean, I'm talking to her right now. So I asked if she would, like, if I could just call her really quickly just so for her to explain. And she said that she doesn't want to get involved. I feel like that can be telling as well.
Okay.
But to me, that doesn't even scream that does not even scream SEE either.
What's the reasoning for her not wanting to get involved?
I'm not trying to be as involved as I already am. She doesn't have a reason.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm leaning towards her being an ethical type. I can't imagine her having logic in her first or second position because that would imply that she is either ignoring or demonstrative logic, and I'm not hearing that at all. Even with types who, you know, if you just look at logical types in general, you don't have a lot of people coming up saying, "Oh yeah, you know, they're such a nice person and so caring," and just what I'm hearing from you guys sounds like she's very expressive. While for me, I wouldn't say I wouldn't say that I'm a bad person, or I wouldn't say I'd say I'm generally a pretty nice guy and I don't push people any kind of way. But I don't ever have people going, "Oh yeah, Trey, he's so sweet," or, you know, I think you can kind of see what I'm trying to say. I'm not seeing a lot of argument for the logic.
All right, so okay, this is a bit frustrating. Okay, so sorry, Michelle said without her input, which is biased, but we're trying to get her input. This is the thing. She wants to be off, like, so what Michelle said, so she doesn't want to influence your typing because knowing MBTI, she could change your mind just by knowing about the functions. That's not what we're asking. We're asking her to literally explain why she doesn't want to meet people in person. I mean, she doesn't want to interact with people via chat. This is not explaining the functions. So I
just want to throw out that there's a certain amount of self-deception to think that typology is going to be that much of a science.
Yeah.
That you need to you know, keep from cross-contaminating viewpoints and stuff. There's a certain amount of subjectivity. You can't get rid of it. It's ideally you would try to, but it's there.
Well, exactly. But yeah, so it's like, why? I don't know. It's not that we're trying to have her say, you know, this is why I think I'm an ESTP. We're just trying to ask a question of what her motivations are. And to me, I feel like that's very, like, I mean, she needs having that information. Like, without the information to be able to type her, you know, you have to have certain information. We can't just look by, like, even watching her videos or even limited interaction with her. Like, I don't know her in real life. You know, I've never met her. So maybe if I knew her in real life, it would be different, even if she wasn't giving us this information. But it's very difficult when, you know, we don't have, like, certain frameworks. I don't know.
So my input on this would be that I'm not attempting to type her. I'm typing the archetype that I've been told about her.
Yes.
So it's an exercise in ability to recognize functions. And what I'm seeing in the chat here is, like, somebody said, asking people to type her is a whole lot of people are terrible at making a good argument for why they think something. Well, first off, we don't think anything. What we're trying to do is identify the archetype and identify function use based on motivation of behavior. But since we don't have the motivation, all we can go on is behavior. And that is why I'm only 10% confident in any conclusion that I reach at the end of this.
Exactly. That's exactly how I feel right now. And to me, it's like, also, I know Love Lou, if you're watching this, I think you still are, maybe you're not. She wanted people to type her, but if we are not given certain like information about her, we are simply just looking off of like snap judgments. And to me, that's not accurate at all in trying to type someone.
So what I'm seeing in the chat here now is that people are saying like we're going based on what she's portraying on YouTube, and that's a different vibe. We've already taken that into consideration. So all this commentary is really super unnecessary because we already know that. We already are taking those into consideration. We're typing the archetype of her. We're not typing actually who she is because I have not watched any of her videos. So I've watched bits and slivers of very few today, and I have had not time to even analyze it. Even if I did, I don't understand the motivations of those behaviors. ESTPs are called the promoters because they're able to adapt their personality to get a expected result. And so naturally, if she's putting on a persona on YouTube and she's going, hey, this is who I need to be likable, then that's what she's going to put on YouTube. And so
which could go for any type, but I do think it is worth noticing that the content she makes is much more socially graceful and inclusive than anything I got to say.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can agree with that. It's definitely much more social and graceful, but we don't know if that's cultural. We don't know if that's how she was raised. We don't know if that was beat into her as a kid. We have no idea. We just had to figure out the motivations of those behaviors. Like,
I mean, I don't think that you can beat that much consistent good manners into an SLE. I went to Catholic high school. It didn't work.
Right. And I'm not going to jump to the conclusion and say that I know her whole history and why she may be adopting that. And there's also such a thing as a type distortion, which we've learned recently too, is that sometimes people appear to be a certain type, or it's hard to identify a certain function based on how their youth was and how they were raised or brought up. So those also exist too. So it's just too many variables to be able to even get to that point. What I think would be helpful is if she really wants to have an outside analysis, then it would be helpful to get an interview with her where she is being 100% honest about answers that she's being asked, and then the motivations behind those.
Exactly.
That would be helpful.
That's originally what I wanted to do with her, is actually have an interview with her. But she doesn't seem to want to do that. And like, again, Luann, if you're watching this, I'm not trying to like call you out or something, but it's just frustrating because none of these systems are going to be accurate if we do not know certain information. Like, I don't know. And I'm looking at the chat. So she grew up Amish, which I already knew that, but people are saying this in the chat. Also, I think to factor in, so she grew up Amish. She left the Amish community. Another thing is she's a female. Like, there's many factors that make her a little bit, even if let's say hypothetically she is an ESTP, there's going to be factors that make her different than Taylor, just in itself.
Right.
So, but it's very frustrating. I feel like we just need to swerve the topic because it's just like we're going to be in a circle jerk if we do not get more information.
Well, for me, the topic is already swerved. The topic is now on how to effectively type someone, and it's less about her.
Yeah.
Right. Let's fuck up the commenters.
Yeah. So
even if we were all world's best socionists, with the information that we have, all we could do is come up with a guess on information that we can't even really trust, because we're looking at multiple different people's perception of one person. Right. And with a very, very limited interaction, there's so little information to go into, you know, who exactly she is and what she's thinking when she's doing these things, which is really important, which especially with like Taylor and Emily, you know, she doesn't know them well enough where she's been able to actually give, you know, some insight as to what's going on in her internal world when she's making her decisions. So, I mean, if you really want, like, if you're looking to have your Socionics type discovered, I mean, if you want accurate information, it's going to have to come from you, because you're the only person who can give that.
Right. And if you give me weird answers, I'm either going to find your contradictions and then challenge those contradictions, or I'm going to find out, you know, okay, what's consistent, because I'm not going to settle on a type unless all 8 functions fit into their proper roles. That's just all it is for me. I'm not going to be confident in a type until that all makes sense.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, I mean, you tell me that someone is worried about personal barriers. I'm going to say that sounds like FI, but I'm not going to say she's SEE, no doubt about it. What I suggested is that we consider SEE as a possibility as a result of that behavior. I'm not saying
that was a good suggestion, by the way. I think that was a very good suggestion.
So Jess Britvek, I don't know if I pronounced your name correctly. Yeah, a live chat with her would have been better. This is exactly what we've been trying to do, but she's not doing it.
I mean, we don't need to make this whole show about her per se.
Oh, no. I'm saying like even individually, like I've been trying to like chat with her, but like that's kind of where it goes. But yeah, going back to just typing. So Michelle said, very true, but this is how people type all the time. Do you know how many comments on my videos are like, that person doesn't seem like the type they claim to be? And that's so true. And that's why, like, I think there's a lot of typing systems out there. I'm just going to say, like, I don't like C.S. Joseph's system. I don't think he's very accurate in his typing. And I think people like him and other people who just make a chart and they're basically like, if you fit this on paper, you're this type. But there's way more that goes into it. Like you're saying, Damon, is the fact of like the whole 8 stack checking out. Unless you're completely like 99.9% right, or like feel like you're accurate with that typing, you're not going to feel like you have pinpointed the type. And I think that's exactly how you should approach things. But a lot of services want to be objective. And through that, it's not objective.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, and I think Taylor had made this argument plenty of times. It's with typology, you can never be 100% objective.
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it. And I'm okay with that, but I can say, and I always proceed to type people and say, look, this is just my opinion, but I'm going to try to make my argument as internally consistent with the model that I'm using. In the case of model A for Socionics, I'll make it as internally consistent as possible. And as long as my confidence is, say, above 70%, I can pretty much say that I'm confident that you're this type. But I can, at this point, you know, for me, I think this live show brings a better picture into perspective. Is how should a person actually be typed? Well, I think it's A, the person needs to be honest and give honest answers. B, they need to be present, obviously. Typing somebody while they're not present, I think, is just ridiculous, because 10 people can do the same thing, right? Trey can eat a bowl of cereal and I can eat a bowl of cereal, and you can't look at Trey the way he eats a bowl of cereal and say he's LII, right? So it's really figuring out, like, okay, why did he want to eat the cereal? What was the motivation behind it? How long did he wait before he ate the bowl of cereal? And we need to figure out those motivations before we just jump to conclusion that they don't do this and these people do that, because what that winds up doing is discrediting typology in general, because it's stereotyping. Like, you'll see commonalities between Taylor and I, but there's also differences. And those differences account for internal motivations, which are either culturally driven or ethically driven or motivationally driven or purpose driven or whatever else they may be. But those differences, what creates much more than just 16 pure types, but rather variations of people within type.
Yeah, Jay.
What do you think about that, Trey?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if cereal was a great example, but
well, I was thinking about how you don't eat, and then I thought about your motivation.
Oh, right.
And that immediately came to mind.
Question is, why is it I'm not eating?
Yeah.
I remember what I didn't eat.
Yeah.
I think that really, if somebody was really doing the best typing job possible, they would ask questions about people's motivation without asking what their motivation is. I mean, you got to kind of help people along and let them reveal what they're doing on their own, because I don't think that people can assess their own motivations any better than anything else about themselves.
100%.
Honestly, I mean.
Yep. I think it's really important to dig. You just got to dig. You can't just accept answer at surface level too. Like, do you like to be successful or not? And if they say yes, then you are SE valuing. Like, come on. First off,
success is obviously owned by TE. TE owns success.
I mean, we get into these stereotypes. Do you like to be successful? Well, it's successful at what? Why? What is the reason behind it? What are we talking about? And this is that clarity seeking that I talk about with TIFE valuers. Is you say successful, well, what does that mean? Dive into a singular generalized principle, which is universally true, then you can make some sense of it.
And you know, how people define different things is one of the, at least from what I've observed, one of the biggest hiccups in even having discussions about typology, because people experience, I mean, my experience of love and yours are going to be completely different, but it's still a very powerful word to everybody, really. And especially the intuition and to a lesser extent feeling, those components of typology just, they don't have the linguistic structure behind them that the thinking and sensing, maybe not even sensing, but I mean, really, who here wants to define introverted intuition right now? Go.
And the first, before you define it, you've got to figure out which taxonomy you're using. Some people think it's the mystic.
Correct.
And then some people think it's like Socionics Model A, it's the sense of time, and it's called time for a reason, right? And it's how states change throughout time, including one's internal state and one's internal perspective as it evolves through time and patterns of time, including past and future. Whereas in MBTI, it's just about the future, looking at abstract patterns and forming more into archetypes, the Jungian archetypes in the collective unconscious. Whereas in Socionics, it's much more about the sense of time and being aware how patterns emerge through time and how they actually result in an end result. And that's through the past and in the future. So there's, you look at these different taxonomies and then you realize, okay, this is what we're talking about. And this is why one can be a particular type in MBTI, which I think is crap, or Socionics, which I think is much more internally consistent, and why I'm a fan of Socionics much more. But I think we need to always clarify the frame in which we're discussing before we just start throwing out terms. And that's why I use the Socionics letters, because it indicates that that's the system and taxonomy that I'm using.
And I'm working on converting my brain over to the Socionics letters too. But we all enter this through MBTI.
Yep.
Before everyone realizes it's bunk.
Yeah. We all came from the MBTI background, and we moved into Socionics.
It is. I just want to throw out to anyone watching this, if it seems like we're not on the same page, or like we didn't reach a nice put together conclusion about Love Lou, this whole thing is sort of a mutation of an idea that I had about 7 hours ago. So this is very much a product of SC moving. So we did not prepare.
There was no preparation in this, and I knew that I'd wing it. Going into this, I knew that it was going to result in something, and I actually think it's amounted to something more significant, which is a consistent and universal problem around the typology community, which is, hey, I can type somebody because I have a gut feeling. Okay, well, support it with logic. Support it with facts. Don't just have a gut feeling. We need to have evidence to be able to conclude that type. If you're making a claim, come with burden of proof. And that's what I want to see in the typology community. If you feel something, prove it. And that's where, put up an argument. Let's see if we can debunk it. And then you have to, did you account for this? It's not so much that you're wrong and I'm right, but did you account for the fact that she does this or he does that? And I think that's why I'll retitle this video to an analysis of typing people using Love Lou as an example.
And anyone making a claim about type, or saying, anyone making a claim has the burden of articulating what you observe. I know I come to a conclusion about people's type way before I've articulated the why. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't, for it to have any validity at all, you've got to explain yourself.
Right. I think it's okay to believe something, but if you're going to try to convince others, you have to have an argument for it.
Right.
And that's my position. You've got to be able to present some type of consistent argument, and then I either will counter with things that you may have not considered, or I will accept your argument as truth, and I'll buy it, and I'll believe it myself.
The argument needs to be consistent.
Yep.
But also, I mean, individuals' insight is is very valuable. I know that you're people seek you out for your insight into their type and typology situation, whatever. And so that unspoken whatever that people bring to the table, that's not to be discounted. It's just you can't drive that motherfucker all the way home.
Yeah, and that's why I have a problem with the typology community in general, and why I get so frustrated with it is because everybody doesn't clarify taxonomy first. Clarify taxonomy so that we can speak the same language. Once we do that, we can clarify, okay, what type is this person? And so that's where I'm at this point now where it's like, okay, if we're going to have a conversation, we're going to make sure that A, we have clarity on what we're discussing, and then B, we can freely discuss it. And I think that's why I actually value this video so much. Yes, it's a product of SE. I like how it's just kind of it flourished, but I think it flourished in the direction it was supposed to, which is let's address the underlying issues and let's fix them. So that being said, I have a church. He just joined. I'm sorry I ignored you for like the past 20 minutes. But do you want to contribute anything while you're here? Would you like to say anything? Introduce yourself?
Not really. I was kind of watching the feed a little bit, and Taylor invited me, but I think you guys got the gist of it, got most of it out there, so I don't really think I can contribute anymore.
Okay.
Unless we're rolling topic.
I have one thing I can say. It's in relation to the thing you said about making an argument and being consistent with the evidence. What if, well, not what if, I mean when, especially with people who are new, who have been reading 10 type descriptions on their own type, and when you're talking to them, they're just feeding you back what they have read. And some people do that even unintentionally. So you can tell that the information you get is not really objective in any way.
Right.
In many senses, because you can say non-objectively that you have a very clear sense of this person isn't being genuine about what they're trying to present themselves as. So it's like there's so many places where you'll just end up with, I can't say what you are because I don't have the information, or you can just say, I don't think you're being true about who you're trying to display yourself as in this context.
I think that's a very, very, very valid point.
Yeah, and then you can kind of get the sense based on reactions and things like that, what they really are, but creating the argument won't be as easy.
Right. So one of the things that I've learned by dealing with bullshitters 24/7, I'm in sales, and my clients bullshit me. My prospects bullshit me. My future customers bullshit me. My book clients bullshit me. And the thing that you learn is that although they put up a smokescreen and they tell you what they either want to hear from themselves and try to get you to believe it, the rule that I have is never assume something to be true until you can prove it, which means that I dig so deep. I take a little probe and I get into their brain and I make them tell me examples of why they're telling me what they're telling me is true. And I'm not going to buy it because it does not lead to a valid conclusion. If you're objective, if you're telling me right now that you want to get typed and that is your goal, then number one is, why are you lying to me? And number two is, what is your motivation for lying to me? Are you attempting to put on another persona? So if is that an insecurity, or do you happen to be a Hamlet or an EIE because you want to put on a mask to represent or something? And that's what we need to identify. So those are things that I think are very helpful, is why I say there's two things you want to do when you're asking somebody questions and taking them through an interrogation process. The number one thing is to dig deep, and number two is to play dumb. You don't have any answers in your own mind, so all you can do is keep asking. And that, to me, has been the most helpful thing in getting through the whole field of bullshit in people's heads that they want to tell themselves about themselves, and they want you to believe it because it validates the mask that they're wearing right in that moment.
Playing dumb is the best tool there is for sifting through people's bullshit.
Yep.
I used to be in sales as well. I mean, I'm really good at playing dumb as well, especially like in Model UN. I did Model United Nations with people, and like I didn't act like I knew what I was talking about, and then I would just come in and like swoop things, like under the like sweep the rug underneath them, and just come at like the debate in an angle that just completely surprise people, because I guess people sometimes will judge me on my appearance and they don't really judge me by like the knowledge that I have about certain subjects. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, Trey was in sales for a little bit too, and I think he's come across the same conclusion that buyers are liars. And in this case, people are trying to get you to buy something, so they're selling you an idea of themselves.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I've had a lot of situations where I was typing somebody and I could tell they were lying to me, or that they were trying to cling on to an idea of themselves that wasn't really true.
Yep.
So, I mean, and that just comes with, like you said, asking enough questions where they end up stumbling on their answers.
So would you agree that the purchasers of typology are people who are sincerely trying to learn more about themselves and others, people who are seeking reinforcement for a self-image that they've placed on themselves that's typically wrong, and people who like to just hurtle bullshit at you to try to outsmart the expert on it. All the ENTPs out there,
right? There's going to be a little bit of all of that. I mean, for myself, for example, the only reason I was looking at typology and was interested in it to begin with was because I had a lot of my own insecurities, and I was finally reading something that was telling me good things about myself, where to me I felt pretty worthless, right? So at the beginning, it was me latching on to an image, less so trying to find out the truth, more so just trying to feel good and figure out like why I was good and things like that. And so, over time, felt a little bit better, didn't need to cling on to anything, and then was just kind of able to study it without that same distortion. So, I mean, people come to it for different reasons, but I think that that's one of the most common ones, is that people read things about themselves and it sounds good, and they feel good about themselves in that sense.
Yeah, I think if we say purchasers, people who look into the system, I think Taylor really narrowed it down to 3 very specific categories, which I agree with all of them. You're going to have people who want to be validated because they have an insecurity and they want to be something they're not. Or you have people who really want to figure themselves out and use it. Or you have people who are genuinely interested in the system and just want to learn it so they can better navigate through life too. And I think those are all fair categories when we're looking at people who are motivated by studying or learning typology. I have fit in all 3 categories at one point or another. Whether I was 3 years old, 10 years old, 5 years old, or 20 years old, it's all been the same. I've fit in each one of those categories at some point in my journey of typology. And being aware of those motivations, I think, is very helpful to understand what people's motives. But all of them have been purchasers of typology at one point. I think that was a pretty good way of categorizing the people that look into this.
What do you think? Do you think that regarding taxonomies, what do you think about people who are adhered too strictly? Do you think they're Pharisees, typology Pharisees, who just stick to a taxonomy? They refuse to expand their understanding or application beyond the letter of the law. I think that that's almost it's infrequent, but I think it's just as invalid as type soup.
Yeah, I think that as we realize that there's a practical application to anything, but aside from practicality, you're looking at systems grow. We learn new things, we identify new things, and to be such a Pharisee that's on the taxonomy, that whatever taxonomy they're studying and accepting it as 100% absolute with no further rendition of improvement. I think that's what all of us clarity seekers really seek, is something that's perfect. But in reality, at some point, we accept that nothing's perfect. And that's why we have people contributing to it all the time. So I think those people are a little, there might be a symptom of arrogance that's associated with, I know more than you, and I'm going to lay down the hammer of truth and tell you the way it is. And but I think that at the end of the day, there needs to be a little bit of openness and realize that you don't have all the information, and continue to learn and be better at what you do and be better at your craft.
So in your experience, where do people find the most use in typology, or the most utility? Where is it best applied? Obviously, the sort of NT troll of attacking with bullshit and trying to juke people out, that's not going to be very valuable to their life. Where do people apply it well?
I can't speak for everyone as my answer, but I'd love to hear everybody's answer of this. But for me personally, where I find the most application is being able to coach individuals and organizations, and being able to identify what people need, what general quadrant it is, and what's the best environment to set up for that organization based on that quadrant, and what that person really values and what they don't. I found that to be very helpful for my understanding, but most importantly, it's been very helpful for my relationship. That's probably the biggest direct impact I've seen. Understanding typology is how it's influenced my relationship, because I don't have a duality in my relationship. It's really growing and learning how to work with another person and realizing that we're both imperfect beings that want to live the rest of our life together, which I think is much more powerful than just saying, hey, look, I'm looking for my dual. Let's try to make it easy, even though duals aren't easy either. I think it's more important just to understand that, hey, look, we are in a relationship and we're mature enough to overcome and learn about our differences and move forward. And as a result of that, I've been able to see pretty tremendous improvement in our relationship just with about 3 or 4 weeks of working with the World Socionics Society's new service of relationship coaching has been extremely enlightening. So I've seen immediate practical application to that. Trey, what about you?
I don't really place as much emphasis on typology as a lot of people would. I'd say that for me, I think it's important to recognize that people are different and that, we're looking at the world in different ways. So if I say that something's right and you disagree, we're looking at different things. We're seeing the same thing in a different light. So I think it's important to recognize that. But I wouldn't really say that there's anything specifically that I think I use typology for. I just think that recognition is very important. Just because, then you recognize that people aren't wrong, that they're not bad, that whatever, that they're just coming from a different perspective or a different place. That's all.
I do want to ask, Damon, how did you conclude, or what was your reasoning for coming up with the SLE narrative for yourself?
I didn't conclude it for myself because I realize I'm not a super objective person when it comes to me, just like everybody else. I think that's the that's the challenge we face, is that we're not objective. Because at that point, I had realized that we tend to want to be something that we're not, right? And so I said, you know what? I'm not going to be attached to any type, and I'm just going to allow someone to analyze me. And over again, as a result, SLE was the outcome. And so for me, it was like, okay, now how can I make this logically consistent in my own mind? And I have been able to do so by putting together all 8 slots and how those functions work for me and the challenges that I have. LIE was the highest competition in the sense of what people may have thought I was, and some people still do, and that's okay. But I've realized with time that my use of NE is very, very, very weak. And I think Trey can attest to that because he lives with me. He operates with me. We are in the same household. And I think Trey can identify how actually my NE is complete trash. And so, yeah, he can.
What was the example you used earlier about the?
Let's not talk about it. So, but yeah, let's not give any specific examples. But the point is that if it really was LIE, I cannot justify 8th slot NE, which demonstrative NE I can't make sense of it, because there's no justification for why or how I would have 4-dimensional NE. I struggle with ideas. I've been trying to create an idea for the last 2.5 years on a business, and I still haven't reached one. And I tend to be very impulsive. That does not determine someone who's NI valuing, or rather NI above SE. I operate on a whim. It's like I will act immediately. I'm much more focused on being able to adapt in the moment. Like this entire call has been nothing but me adapting. And that's where I'm comfortable. I don't feel any nervousness like, ooh, I didn't know how to adapt. It's just, this is my state of being, is being able to adapt on the fly. I don't worry about the future result of things. I would like that provided somebody to help guide me, but the value I've gotten from my girlfriend specifically is she kind of tells me how things unfold. That indicates that my NI is not so good either. So I can't justify the case for LIE. I also know how I use TI and how I actually have a very hierarchy. I got in trouble in school many times, suspended a few times for creating gangs. And I was the general in those gangs and everybody else was my subordinate. And I had subordinated all my peers in my class and made them all pay me. And, and
my dog.
yeah, so it was just putting people in hierarchies ever since I was early age. And then when I joined ROTC, I quickly rose up in the ranks, and I also subordinated everybody by creating an organization chart which happened to have me at the top. So I immediately went from like Lance Corporal all the way up to First Sergeant. And that was like in my first year, which I was a freshman. So I've always been able to subordinate and find ways around the system, bend the rules, make shortcuts, and adapt on the fly. And so to me, there was no indication that supported someone who tends to have long periods of inertia and someone who tends to think and reflect on long-term outcomes, but someone who knows how to adapt in the moment, someone who presents a strong amount of ability to get things done, and someone who keeps in the positive action at all times. So for me, the only thing that made consistent sense was SLE. I could not justify LIE. And I do have I can turn on FE, and many times I've been told my FE is really good at times, and then other times it completely fails me. So, but I did realize how I actually value that too, and I can go on and on and on, but this show is not about me. But that's the long.
I just find it interesting though. So you think that your girlfriend's an IEI?
No, she's IEE.
IEE.
Yep.
So what is convert that? INFP?
ENFP. Yep.
ENFP.
It's a super ego relation.
How did you guys end up dating? Like, what was that about? How would you describe your relationship?
So I will do that offline. I'll give you those answers. I'm not sure if she's comfortable with me revealing all that information, but I'll tell you off the broadcast and I'll answer that for you. It's not a problem to me, but as long as it's not broadcasted publicly, I think that would be fair for her. But yeah, any other questions about that typing or where you were at with it?
Well, I guess not really specifically with her, but just like, how would you describe the super ego relationship, at least with your experience? So not like, I mean, you can tell me whatever details you want to tell me after this, but like, just not like, you can basically sub in any ENFP if you want.
Right.
Just go get your girlfriend.
Yeah, she's not the video. She's not the video type, but she's very, very thoughtful. So she has a lot of insight on things. But I'll tell you how the super ego relationship that I've had with hers is the best example. But I've obviously known other ENFPs, and the challenges that I've had is specifically related to very, very, very difficult communication. It's like I'm talking to a person who's not hearing a thing I say. And it also feels like there's a constant critic, someone who's judging every action that you're doing. And with time, I've learned to make that work in my relationship, and it actually has alleviated a lot, understanding Socionics, and we both have learned to work around it. Jack has been extremely helpful for that, and I'll give him 100% credit for our ability to navigate through that. But also our maturity. Her and I are pretty mature people, and we're able to navigate through those issues. Of course, we have a lot of conflicts at times and challenges that stand in our way, but at the end of the day, we both are driven toward personal development, and the super ego is the critic. Your super ego functions are your critic functions. So naturally, if you have a relationship that's centered around super ego, it's like having your own internal critic outside of yourself.
Yeah. The people are getting confused in the comments because they're saying that I know you typed as ENTJ and MBTI. What would you say to people like that? Because it says, like, for people, because people are saying, because to me, I don't necessarily think that it transfers over completely. But an ENTJ and an ESTP cognitively are very different. So what would you say, like, do you believe that you're ENTJ and MBTI?
Yes, I still am under that. I'll tell you why, and I hope this answers a lot of people's questions as regard to this, is because MBTI, which is ran by CPP, that's the organization that really structures MBTI, and it has a team of researchers that focus on not cognitive theory, but they focus on the validity of the test. And as a certified MBTI master practitioner, I've gone through hundreds of hours of continuing education and understanding how MBTI works. TE is glorified. TE is like, it has components that are aspects of TE and MBTI. So for example, MBTI TE, it has command, it has power, it has force, it has structure, it has hierarchy, it has rules, it has creating order, it has efficiency, it has all these things. It's extremely glorified. So what you do is when you're trying to figure out another type, if you're converting from MBTI, is you take the aspects that you identify with, like force, and you take in the hierarchy, right? Say, okay, force and hierarchy makes sense. So you pull those aspects out and you find out that force is its own entity inside of Socionics called SE. Hierarchy is its own entity in Socionics called TI. So you can break MBTI TE into two aspects right there, right? Then you take the efficiency portion and that actually translates right over into Socionics TE. So it's the aspects in which you start identifying and you go, okay, MBTI TE is like 100 aspects. It's not actually one aspect. It's not just TE. It's what part of TE do you relate to? Do you relate to this aspect? Of course, I would never, ever suggest anybody to try to convert MBTI into Socionics. They just need to delete their brain and start from scratch, because you can't.
Most people don't even know about the facets in MBTI to begin with.
Oh, it's a disaster if you're trying to convert over. And so, yes, naturally, I do relate to ENTJ and MBTI more than ESTP, because the ESTP, SE, and MBTI is all about sensory perception, right? It's about it's like SI in Socionics, being aware of colors and taste and sounds. And so that's SI in Socionics, right? So that would not be my dominant function in MBTI. I don't give a shit about colors and sounds. I'm aware of them, but it's not about, I want to set up an aesthetically pleasing environment. I don't care that much.
I don't think even in MBTI, ESTPs are trying to have an aesthetically pleasing environment. But yeah.
In MBTI, yes, they are. And yeah.
That's really interesting. I feel like, why even have MBTI to begin with? Because I feel like that interpretation of the functions, I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you this. This is why I'm not an MBTI fan, is because it doesn't make sense. The face that you gave me just about 20 seconds ago, this I don't know face, is exactly the face that represents MBTI. If I could meme that, and it should say something like "still trying MBTI," because that's exactly what it is. It's confusing. It's people. It gives people the wrong perception. It's moved away from Jungian theory. Back when MBTI was originally founded in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, when it was being built, right? You have MBTI and you have this, okay, it's being structured. It was much more Jungian based, called JCF functions, right? As it's moved forward, they've segregated it to make the test more valid. It's about the test and not about the functions. So when you actually take these courses, they say, this is what we call cognitive theory function courses, but it's theory. Let's focus on the test. Let's focus on the validity of the test. So the test, although very accurate and can separate you into dichotomies, it's not as valid, or sorry, the test is more valid than any of the cognitive function theory. In fact, a lot of MBTI people that are the top researchers in MBTI still believe the tertiary function has the exact same attitude as the auxiliary function.
Interesting.
Yep. So for example, ENTJ would be TE, NI, SI, and then FI.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge with it. So that's why I stick to Socionics. And I think the biggest thing is you stick to a taxonomy. And
can I interject really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, everybody here is acting confused because you did jump into the whole conversion between MBTI and Socionics. Point is, they do not convert. They do not convert because they're entirely different systems. So trying to convert would be nearly impossible, and you'd have to do it backwards. He found out his sociotype first, and then was able to find the links between why there were different in each system. He's talking about how one system has certain, definitions for certain functions. They're entirely different. They're describing two entirely different things. So to try to say, oh, well, you're ENTJ here and you're SL here, this makes no sense. Yeah, it doesn't make. What?
I think I disagree with that. I think that they do translate to an extent, but you got to dig deeper. If they didn't, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now about whether or not they
Yeah,
convert.
I just find it kind of bullshit. I mean, personally, to think that, like, I mean, I'm not trying to be like mean towards you, Chad, but like, I just find the whole TE, like you lead with TE thing in Myers-Briggs is to be bullshit. Like, that doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Like, I'm sorry I'm cursing on your channel. Like, and to be able to say, well, and then I'm this completely different type in Socionics, that doesn't make sense. I think, and like, I guess the reasoning that you gave, I wasn't like a I don't know face. It was a this doesn't, like, this is weird kind of face. It just, I don't know how to describe it, but to me, I don't think it completely transfers over. I think you really have to start with Socionics and then try to transfer over to MBTI, but I don't know.
So I get where you're coming from.
It's even more confusing to say that you're ENTJ and
I don't say it, but you ask and I give you an answer. That's
I guess functionally, like, to put in the functions, if you just say it through letters, like if you just want to break it down to the basics, so like even go Kiersey on us and say ENTJ makes sense there, and you don't go into the functions, but to bring the functions into it, that doesn't make any sense.
It does make sense. They're the same. They're the labels do not mean the same thing. Okay, so this is why it's stupid, and let me explain to you, because I've tossed this around for the longest time, and I can explain all of this. There is some crossover. That is 100% true. But in that crossover, you're going to find some people fall ENTJ to LIE. Other people fall ENTJ to SLE. Some people go from ENTJ to LSI. You'll have these people moving into these different categories from ENTJ because the aspects are consolidated into one term, right? That one term, which is TE, encapsulates what Socionics calls SE. It calls it TI. It calls it TE. And all those different Socionics aspects fall into one generalized term in MBTI called TE. That is based on years of Jungian cognitive function theory and then the modification of that over time. But there is a part of that TE in MBTI that goes directly to TE in Socionics, okay? And so how you can justify that and how you can make sense of it is go, okay, so what aspect is that? Well, it's efficiency, right? So SLEs have 4-dimensional TE, and that 4-dimensional TE means they're very good at it. So is it valued though? So I can tell you right now that although I know how to be efficient in the sense of, say, resourcefulness, I am much more of a spender than my girlfriend who values TE in the sense of efficiency and utility. I will buy things that I think make life fun right the hell now. She will go, that was probably not the smartest financial decision. And I'm like, I don't care. This is my life. I only live for this period of time. I don't value that aspect of TE, although I know financially I could have went, you know what? Yeah, it's not the best financial decision, but I'm not always going to make my decisions financially. I'm impulsive. So what I value is the other side of that MBTI TE, which is force. And I value that aspect, which is being able to apply pressure. I also value the aspect of, okay, hierarchy, creating rules. Creating rules falls into TI and Socionics. Okay, so the problem is that we're using the same lettering to define two entirely different things. I can call this particular object A, but it's this one object, say it's a cup, right? And I can call this A too. They're two different things, but they're both A. So I've labeled it incorrectly. So it's not, the problem is people are interchanging the terms and they're not creating two completely different taxonomies. And that's where the challenge is you have to separate it in your mind, delete MBTI, because if you do that, you're going to mix the terms. Are we talking about JCF, which is Jungian cognitive theory, or are we talking about MBTI? Or are we talking about MBTI today? Or are we talking about Socionics Model A? And Model G now has different terms too. So if you want to bring that into the mix, you realize that SE isn't the same thing in Model G as it is in Model A. So it's about keeping consistent with a single taxonomy. So if you can do that, that's where it starts to unfold and make sense. There is some crossover. Yes, there is. But it's not enough to say that you will always remain the same type. That is actually completely incorrect.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. But, I mean, I have a different reasoning behind that than I think you do. I just find it interesting. I just find it, I don't know. I'm not going to get into it. I don't want to, you know, whatever.
Right. Well,
I think from my perspective, you got to leave MBTI behind. Does it cross over? Sure. But, you know, I'm a Sagittarius. That doesn't mean I'm good at archery. I mean, I might be good at archery, but it's coincidental. It doesn't matter. The point is, I mean, I read Isabel Myers-Briggs' book, and it sucks. It's so fucking basic and vague that you just, the greatest thing to come out of MBTI, in my opinion, is the 4-letter references.
Yeah. So
that's it.
Emily, to put it, just one more thing to kind of help make a practical example so other people can understand too, is like, if I ask you, what function would rule making fall under?
What do you mean? Oh, okay. So I get what you're saying. So,
yeah.
Okay. I guess I understand what you mean in the sense that in Socionics, it's the functions are dynamic. They're working with one another. They don't necessarily, they're not like in MBTI, they try to make them independent on their own. And that's just not really the way that cognition works. The thing that's so annoying though is like, I just feel like it's such a circle jerk with everything. It's so annoying that we have to have MBTI in the first place to reel people in, because in general, I'm personally using Socionics terminology when I'm talking about MBTI because I really want the transition to be smoother for people, and maybe that's wrong of me to do. Because I just think that Myers-Briggs was built on a very shallow system that valued workplace dynamics, and I don't think that's extremely valuable if you add the element of a completely different cognitive type.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to, I guess, yeah, I agree with you on the transfer thing, but I feel like it's even more confusing. I'm not saying for you, I'm saying in general. By the way, but the screen is like going back and forth.
Let me just
so I think that might be distracting for people.
Yeah, I just clicked you.
Yeah, I don't know what I was about to say.
Are you just saying the entire system is kind of incorrect? Are you saying it's not an accurate system in general? I don't really. Okay. You're saying it as a system, like what they've defined isn't a clear enough picture because of how much they jumble everything together.
Well, yeah, it's very surface level because their intentions were not to really understand the cognitive functions and how they interact. It was more of let me see how you can interact in a group setting, or like I don't know.
So Emily, I would say that I think your motivations are very, very genuine in the sense that you want to use the same terminology to help people get an understanding of like, okay, I'm trying to overwrite MBTI because it's crap. And I agree with that. I think that the challenge is that I have a different approach. Mine is delete MBTI and don't attempt to convert, just erase. And I think that you're more gentle in the way that you're getting people to switch over, but we're both accomplishing the same thing, right? Which is trying to get people to move over. And that is what I've been forcefully trying to do for the last year. I've obviously taken a year or 2 years off, but I've always stuck to the idea of sticking to a specific taxonomy and using different language. It's why I refer to TE and Socionics now as pragmatism. I don't call it TE very often. I call it pragmatism. Whereas in MBTI, I call it TE. because these terminologies help people distinguish how different these actual things are that we're defining. And so I think that we're on the same page. I just think our motivations have been a little different, and our ways of going about doing those things are quite different.
I guess
It's almost like you guys are duels.
What?
It's almost like you guys are duels or something.
I don't know if we are duels or not, but I personally just think I just don't know why you even are holding on to ENTJ anymore.
I'm not.
Okay.
You asked.
No, people were saying ENTJ in the comments.
That's what they're referring to, and they asked. So that I was answering their question. So,
Okay.
But if people ask me, what is your MBTI type? Yeah, it's ENTJ. I mean, that's the answer to it. I'm not going to be like, well, I don't have an MBTI type. I mean, I do. I don't give it any validity, though.
I mean, technically, I'm an ENTP by that metric because I've taken the MBTI, and that's what I got.
Right.
I personally don't think that the MBTI test is anywhere accurate, but
I don't think so either. But
I think you can. I mean, literally, I've taken the test like a few days ago, and I got ENFP, and I've just literally, I think all of us can take that test and figure out if we wanted to get a certain type, we could. But yeah, okay. I guess I understand more so what you're talking about. I don't know. I just feel like your approach, I think, is very admirable too, but I don't know how realistic that is. In the sense that people aren't, I mean, unless we like do like a very subliminal campaign where we go out there and we put Socionics everywhere so people are just like, oh, I've seen this word, where did this come from? Like, they're gonna lead with Myers-Briggs. So I don't know. I guess that's my reasoning behind it, is like, people don't know about Socionics. Like, if you ask someone on the street, they're not 9 times out of 10, even maybe more than that, they're not going to know what Socionics is, and they probably haven't even heard the term before.
Yeah, that's fair. But we've also, I would say that it is practical because we've actually created multiple communities which stick to specifics who have successfully converted from MBTI. So we're actually in the process of doing that right now, and it is working. So we do have some actual practical application in being able to successfully convince people to drop MBTI. On a global scale, I can't speak for that, but on micro level scales, absolutely. It is entirely possible, and it does work. I think if we keep the same terms, the challenge is that people will confound the two systems. And I know that they're coming from MBTI, but it's not too hard for a lot of people just to let it go and say, look, start over. And that's what any sociologist will tell you, is drop MBTI, because you can't take that stuff with you. It's kind of like joining the military. Forget who you are and learn who you're going to become. It's the same process of walking.
Well, I mean, as Taylor knows, I've said this maybe he doesn't know, but I've said this several times on my channel, that when you get into Socionics, to drop everything, just like how you said. Because I think so many people mistype in MBTI in general. That's kind of the issue. But I just don't think, I mean, maybe on a micro scale, but on a macro scale, I just feel like MBTI is kind of the bridge. I mean, we can break down the bridge as much as we can, like in the short term. I mean, or like the long term, but in the short term, the bridge is still there.
Right.
Yeah, but isn't the bridge kind of the problem, though?
Yes.
Yep.
People need to cross it. I mean, it's the intro. We got to recognize it for what it is. It's the introduction. It's how people get here. Exactly. It's how I got here. It's valid in that capacity, but beyond that, you're going to gain no understanding from it. I mean, it's really kind of a slick combination of marketing to businesses as well as hitting that individual need for validation. Because if you look through the questions closely and the descriptions, I mean, people who are not intuitive get intuition results, and the way that they describe intuition is very, you're special, buddy, you're my special buddy. So it's a good marketing system, and it's how people get into this. But people at some point need to recognize it. This is a bullshit system. It served its purpose. I want to move past. I got to learn more.
I guess my point with this is the fact that people, I would say, I think you guys are being very idealistic in a lot of ways, which, you know, I am a very idealistic person in general. But the thing about it is a lot of people are not coming to this for personal growth. They're coming to this because they found out their personality type via taking a psychology class or in their, I don't know, marketing job or something, and they get into it, and so there's just varying levels of interest, and there's also maybe the people that aren't actually interested, but they're interested in for it in the wrong reasons. I think, I mean, what are your plans like on a macro scale to like just basically squash MBTI? Because I'm all for squashing MBTI, but there needs to be a plan on the macro scale to do that. I mean,
I agree, and I think I could speak to this because one of the things about Socionics that makes it such an amazing system is that it's so complicated, but yet it's so accurate, right? So I think one of the issues is, you know, sure, for a bunch of nerds and nobody's like us, you know, we're gonna have a fun time.
For yourself, Trey.
They call everybody else a nerd nobody, so they were in the same boat as me. Shut up. But point is, I think there is some improvement that can be made towards like simplifying Socionics in a way that most people are going to understand, because a lot of those people aren't looking to understand it to that level of depth. And I was actually talking to Damon the other day, just saying, you know, I'm going to actually spend some time to try to figure out how we can simplify this so that it's easier to understand, because I think that's one of the important directions for Socionics moving forward, is that sure, like we have been focused on how can we get down to the very bottom of this, like as far as like what's the most accurate representation of, you know, the difference between people. But you know, I think it's important that we simplify it as well, because otherwise it's never going to catch a lot of attention, and you're going to have that issue where everybody that comes to Socionics came from Myers-Briggs, right? So I think the difference between the two is that Myers-Briggs is extremely simple, but it does not have enough depth, right? So if we can match the simplicity in Myers-Briggs to Socionics, then maybe it'll catch on a lot more.
I think the error here is that I never mentioned changing the world. I'm talking about if you want to have a
See, but I'm trying to.
Yeah, so I'm talking about if you want to have a conversation, pick one. Let's talk MBTI or let's talk Socionics. I'm talking about clarifying taxonomies, right? So this is common for us lack of NI people. We're not looking at the big picture. We're looking at, let me punch you in the face right now. Pick one, right? And so we don't think, I'm not thinking like, how is this going to impact on a macro level scale? I don't even have a plan. You're talking about making a plan. I don't have one, you know? So for me, it's impulsivity of okay, I'm going to throw together a community within 24 hours, and either you're going to pick a topic and it's either going to be MBTI or Socionics or Enneagram, and that's what we can discuss. At that point, I haven't thought past it, right? So now this conversation has gone to me talking about having a conversation now to breaking CPP and their entire business model, and then showing the world how we're going to get rid of MBTI. I think it's crap if you're trying to learn Socionics, but if you want to learn a simple test, sure, by all means. The realities of the situation are that in MBTI, you're not going to beat CPP because it's simple and they're marketing it very well, and they have a high advertising budget, and they're a for-profit company. Socionics is open source, and everybody has their own different slant, and it's not internally consistent with itself as far as different contributors. So there's a big disparity that really makes it very almost impractical to dispart on a massive level scale like MBTI is. And I don't ever think that Socionics is going to take the same traction that MBTI does, but that's fine by me. As long as we know what we're talking about and the terms are set and everything's properly framed at the beginning of the conversation, we're good.
You got to go around MBTI and have faith that people who want to find the other side will find it. You know?
Come to heaven.
Right. not trying to take on the world's problems here.
Stop being wrong. Come here and be right.
Well, I mean, you guys cannot have a plan. I have a plan, but I guess my plan is different than what you guys are trying to do.
Well, we just do stuff and buy shit.
That's what I'm saying. We don't have a plan. You're saying it's different, but we don't even have a plan.
Yeah.
I mean, this is how Taylor and I arranged this call. He goes, "Hey man, I already put up an ad that's already put a video up and that's going to advertise the video that you're going to do later." I was like, "Okay, cool. And what's it about?" He's like, "Some person named Love Lou." And I was like, "Okay, I haven't watched any of her videos. I'll wing it." And that was it.
They're total wing. And that's why I reached out to him very specifically.
I mean, you contacted me on Twitter. It's not like I had any preparation. I think it's very clear that we didn't have any preparation before.
Damon was the first one I reached out to because in all of typology, actually, okay, you are very quick on to jump on shit, but he's the one that I knew would be like, okay, let's do some shit.
No.
Would you impulsively buy a replica Predator mask, though?
It depends. I mean, I don't really like Predator, so.
It's fucked up.
I probably would. I'm a big Predator fan.
Yeah.
Yep. If it bleeds, you can kill it.
Can I throw a tangent out there?
Yeah.
So what do you guys think as far as, so I know we're looking at motivations and stuff, and we're looking at, well, I don't even know what MBTI is, if it's motivation or behavioral, but so later down the road, we have like cognitive type right now, which is trying to use the Voltology system, like so recognizing facial structures, patterns, eye movements, things like that. Do you ever think we're going to get to that point where we can bridge the gap, where we can actually start typing people based on behavior? I mean, I kind of, it might be inaccurate, but I kind of myself, I don't do full-on Voltology thing where they look at the eye movement and break everything down so structurally, like every little thing. But I mean, I sort of look at speech patterns a lot. So, I mean, I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that going forward? Or do you have it? Does anyone out there kind of, I use stereotypes myself. Like I look at someone's, of course, their motivations, but I look at a lot of like how they're presenting themselves, like what they're saying, how they're saying it. I don't know if that's just a bias, but I mean, it is, but yeah.
I think personally I use my SC observations about people, their demeanor, speech patterns, look, all that shit, more than anything else that I can describe to figure out somebody, their type, that, whether they're full of shit, just everything about them. And I can't explain it. Yeah. And I certainly don't think that I could take what I do and teach SE as a system. So I think Voltology is inherently kind of mental masturbation, even though it is something I do, I just don't see how you could make it a system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
that's a tough. Yeah, it's not even a complete thought. It's just I just find myself doing it so naturally, and I'll get into an argument like that's just because he looks like that or says that, or it's hard to stop myself from doing it. It's kind of a natural.
I think observations are great. My challenge with it is I will challenge you to logically back it up with some consistent argument instead of a gut feeling. So observations are a way to have some piece of evidence that shows that this could be the case, right? But it's like running it through a court of law. Does this evidence actually represent the events that took place, right? So if you're observing and you're making observations and you're saying this person blinked twice, right? So let's say Voltology, for example, and we're looking at this and we go, okay, they blinked twice, but why? Did you throw a baseball bat at him? Did you throw a fly at him, or did it fly? You have to know the motivations for the behavior, in my opinion, to be able to build a logical case. Otherwise, you're just going, you're stereotyping. This person did this for this reason, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I find that I think observations are very, very powerful tools to help begin to lean you toward a type. But then you have to test yourself and go, I'm not going to validate this type until I can actually prove it with logical consensus consistently inside of itself. Can I fit all 8 functions into their proper slots, gather the information elements into the all 8 functions, and make sense of this entire type. If I can't, I'm not going to complete type.
Then it fails.
Right. Yep.
You can't read someone's mind. No verification.
Yep. So and I'm okay with it. Look, I'm not going to let somebody go and be like, I'm not going to be perfect. I can't figure out someone's type. I'll be like, I'm unable to reach a conclusion. I'm going to get a second opinion. It's like a doctor. They're not going to diagnose something because they're afraid of being wrong. You know, they're going to go, we're going to get a second opinion. It's just what a professional should do.
I want to say this really quickly. As you are talking, I think you need to click on your square because Church, you keep on going in and out, and I think the interaction with your microphone.
Kata, try putting mute on.
I would put it on mute and also Chad, when you're talking on your square.
Yeah, thanks. I should make you a moderator or something so you can control that, because I tend to not pay attention to that. I see it, but I'm like, who cares? But
1 second she's a moderator, next second she's marching us towards typology domination.
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of the plan, but
don't let that headboard be misleading.
Yeah. Well, as far as that goes, I think that we just need to. I'm the guy who just puts it all together. Someone give me the vision, right? Someone put together the picture. Someone do what needs to. Someone says this is the big term picture, and then I'll mobilize the forces and make it happen and execute. That's kind of how I like to work. It's why I've always considered myself not a startup founder, but rather a startup executive. I'm just a go. I'll just get it done, right? So it's like, to me, I'm not really interested in necessarily changing typology community. I'm more interested in just making sure we can have a good conversation should we be discussing something that we're mutually interested in.
And for what it's worth, I do think that he's an SLE and not an LIE. He just has a little bit more put together professional presentation about it than I do, but it took me a minute to change my mind.
Well, I personally don't type people on behavior alone, so I think that's a bit different too. I'm not saying that you aren't or you aren't or you are. I just am skeptical in general of everything. But yeah.
Well, the way that I work is, if you are skeptical, put together a logical argument and we'll have a conversation. And so, and that's how I am. Just if you feel that something that you need to discuss, or you feel like you want to have an opinion, I'm more than happy to discuss it with you. And if you can change my mind, great. You know, that's fine by me. But I'm not. Like I said, I went into this typology this second round with a lack of attachment to type. I don't care. It's not interesting to me as far as my own type. I love understanding it and seeing how it works, and I know how it relates to me, and don't care past that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's been very helpful too, because it has moved me an inch toward more objectivity, even though I'm still in the 100% subjective point when it comes to your self-typing, right?
Yeah.
So anybody else want to add anything before I wrap this show up?
Yes. I want to promote the Discord.
Okay.
So we have a Discord. It's got Socionics, Enneagram. We even have a place for some MBTI discussion on there. So I'm going to go ahead and post that in the live chat. And I will also post it in the comments or in the description of the video. So make sure you join.
Perfect. And Emily or Taylor, or it's Suzanne or Susan?
It's Suzanne.
Suzanne. Okay. Yeah. Do you want to add anything? Any three of you want to add anything?
No, not at this point.
Okay. Thank you for attending.
No, I don't really have much else. I guess I would just say, for me, and it's agitating me, I'm trying to work out how to even bring an SE, observation back to how people figure out someone's type. How I would even be able to present that as an argument. right? So for me, the ultimate test of, for instance, whether you were an SLE or an LIE would be meeting you in person, because you can feel the SE or not. Meeting Eric Strauss in person was fucking mind-boggling. I had no idea how much difference there was between first slot and eighth slot SE until I met Eric. And then you realize that, he doesn't always know where to put his lens and shit. But I don't know. I wish that I could articulate or encapsulate whatever that is, but I can't. So
it just had a funny example, but I think there's, like I said to Church over there, I think there's merit in being able to look at observations and go, look at this presence that this person is bringing to the table, but also keep in mind of the motivations of why they may not do that, because there is a challenge. If an SE user is actually active in their role, you'll not see that SE because the SE is shut off. And that's where you have to look at it and go, oh, okay, this person's in their role. That's why you can't just catch them at any moment, and somebody may be acting in their role function. So, it's hard to type just based on a single instance either. And that's why I'm really stressing a logical argument for no matter what it is. So Taylor, if you're trying to figure out how to capture that might be something we can talk about offline too.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I had a thought.
Yeah.
An angry SLE, you feel that. The other one, not as much. It's just an adult jumping up and down, making noises.
Okay. I don't know how logical that is, but it's a
not.
great observation.
It's not.
It's a great observation.
But yeah, I mean, it illustrates the sort of thing, I'll be able to meet someone face to face and tell if, I don't know, it's just whether they'll back down or push back,
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Were both of you, Church and Damon, you were both in ROTC, right?
I was in ROTC. But, I mean, I didn't like that. So the TI thing doesn't. I did not like Rose at all. So wasn't very punctual either. So, but, I mean, I like other aspects of the SC. I guess the partying and the working out mostly, but not the actual or cleaning stuff at 5 a.m. for no reason. That was pretty retarded. So. But.
When I was a freshman in college, my floor was right above the ROTC floor, and in sort of SLE 8 style, I decided to put myself in a hierarchy above the ROTC guys, because it's a very macho, it's a macho group.
Yeah.
And that's how they presented themselves, and they kind of walked all over everybody in the dorms, but they also can't really actually fight back, because then they're going to lose their ROTC. So I don't know. It was some douchebaggery that I enjoyed the shit out of.
That's good stuff.
That's all I got.
Let me end this broadcast. Unless somebody wants to add something else, I'm gonna shut the broadcast off, and we can do a little post talk. If any questions that we don't want to broadcast, you can do there, and then we'll sign off. Okay.
Adios.
All right, great. Let me end this broadcast real quick. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We appreciate your viewership, and hopefully we'll be doing this again shortly. Thanks again.